It's Monday night, and you know what that means. The Jersey First Television Network proudly brings to you the latest edition of Real Talk. And yes, I am the generational talent in Garden State media. And certainly I'll continue to be the weapon of mass disruption because my level of honesty, folks, now more than ever, is truly necessary in this era of journalistic deception. That's right. It is me, Fernando Uribe. Happy Monday, everyone. Happy March to you all. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. And certainly I'm looking forward to daylight savings time this Sunday, spring forward. And of course, it's just a reminder that longer and sunnier days are ahead. Baseball season is right around the corner. As you can see right behind me, the NBA playoffs are quickly approaching. My Lakers are as hot as anyone in basketball right now, so I'm excited about that. Obviously, the NHL playoffs also approach. And folks, let's just be honest, nicer, warmer weather, that's always a good thing. But we appreciate you making this a part of your Monday night viewing here, and thank you for tuning in from wherever and however you may be doing so right now on Facebook Live via StreamYard, also on the Jersey First YouTube page, along with all of our social media platforms. And if you haven't done so already, folks, what are you waiting for? It takes a few seconds. Don't forget to like Real Talk with Fernando Uribe and Jersey First on Facebook, of course. Follow us on Instagram and X. For all of you subscribe on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and share tonight's episode here of Real Talk. And of course, folks, you'll be subscribed to all of our great content that we bring you every single week. And of course, whether you get your podcast on Spotify or SoundCloud, download Jersey First. And once again, you'll be notified of all the great content that we bring you every single week with, once again, folks, I can't say it enough, the dream team of Garden State Media. That's right, it is Jersey First TV. Of course, brand new episodes of the Nader Narrative premiere every Thursday, hosted by my amazing tag team partner, the outstanding Elizabeth Nader. And of course, brand new episodes of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe premiere live every Monday night. Check your local listings for start times, of course, and you'll be tuned in to what's going on right now in Jersey politics. Folks, we got a jam-packed show for you right now. First of all, I just sort of want to just give a special thank you to the Liberty Science Center, along with RWJ Barnabas and the Jersey City Medical Center for hosting this year's Hudson County STEM Showcase. And of course, New Jersey's premier journalist, once again for the second consecutive year, was a judge at today's STEM Showcase. Folks, over 500 amazing students brought their projects, brought their presentations. And let me tell you something, even Dr. Uribe likes to learn stuff once in a while. And I certainly did today with all these outstanding presentations, all these great students, once again, at the Liberty Science Center. And folks, if you haven't visited the Liberty Science Center lately, I don't know what you're waiting for. It's very affordable. Parking's available as well. And folks, it's right off exit 14B on the New Jersey Turnpike. And I got to tell you, it's a great, great venue to visit, even if you're not visiting the STEM Showcase. But today I was happy to be there. And certainly I'll talk a little bit more later in the program about my experience today, being a judge, all the great networking, obviously getting to know so many professionals in the STEM field, and of course, so many great people that work, of course, at the Liberty Science Center, and of course, everyone that works in the Hudson County STEM community. Folks, I just got to tell you, it was something that, quite frankly, to me, was incredibly enriching and certainly incredibly fulfilling today. And again, I can't say enough about what a great experience it was. Being a judge for the second consecutive year, again, it was not just the experience of being there, but seeing that, you know what, a lot of our youth that are so STEM-centric, let me tell you something, brilliant young men and women that I got to interact with today and great presentations. And hopefully, some Hudson County kids will come out victorious later today after some of the scoring that took place. So I'll definitely share my story a little bit later on the show. You don't want to miss that, of course, folks. One of the things, obviously, you want to stick around for final thoughts. I'm going to have a lot to say about Trump derangement syndrome in New Jersey. And of course, there's no shortage of them, whether it's in New Jersey media, New Jersey higher education, activism, or advocacy, folks. There is a long list of TDS people in New Jersey that I like to cook on a regular basis. I'm going to go after a few of them later on in final thoughts. And quite frankly, what makes them insufferable. Of course, we'll talk about two specific ones. Obviously, assembly candidates up here by me in Hudson County, Hoboken Mayor Ravi Bala, and also Katie Brennan with their usual virtue signaling that took place last Thursday in front of City Hall. Not even a rally, folks. I don't consider 25 people gathered in front of City Hall, a rally, maybe just a small gathering. But I wouldn't call it this, ruckus rally as it was being advertised. But a little bit more on them later. And of course, folks, when we talk about TDS in New Jersey, folks, it doesn't get any better than one of the laziest journalists around, and that's Max Pizarro. Yes, folks, and let's be honest. I mean, seeing 2 articles published in 2 weeks by this lazy bastard, that's quite an accomplishment by Maxie. And I'll tell you why his latest column is just his usual nonsense, and reminds us that when it comes to Trump derangement syndrome, Max Pizarro tends to exhibit it pretty severely. So all of that, of course, more on final thoughts. And of course, folks, talk a little bit more about the great traffic that continues here on Real Talk every single week. And I got to tell you, folks, it's hard to be humble when you're this great. But again, I'm deeply humbled by all of you that make these numbers behind me possible. So I'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. Wonderful traffic once again for the month of February. Over 67,000 organic views. Folks, nothing boosted. All right, no ads bought or anything like that. All organic, folks. Again, unlike, a lot of these little Mickey Mouse journalists in New Jersey with Mickey Mouse shows and Mickey Mouse traffic, folks, the only traffic they know maybe is on the Parkway or on the Turnpike or Route 78 or Route 202. But here on this show, it's real traffic because it's real talk. So we'll talk a little bit more about that during final thoughts. You want to stick around, folks, not to be missed whatsoever. Folks, it is an election season. We just came off a very volatile election season. It's another election season coming up here in 2025. We have all 80 state assembly seats up for grabs. We have primaries for both the Democrat and Republican parties, as Phil Murphy is term limited. He'll be completing his 8 years later on this year, and we'll see who succeeds him. Obviously, and it's a very, very volatile political season. One of the biggest issues during this election cycle in New Jersey, obviously, and I've been talking about this at length, is not just affordability, not just about taxes, but also about parental rights and health freedom. A lot of these social issues that really create a lot of discussion. And one of the biggest discussions, obviously, has been about the LGBTQ community in New Jersey during this election cycle. What better person to talk to than my good friend, and he's a big fan of the show, and he is the distinguished executive director of Garden State Equality. Folks, he's my good friend. Christian Fuscarino joins us live here on Real Talk. Christian, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me on.
Appreciate it. Folks, again, if you haven't done so already, please visit gardenstateequality.org for more information. Make sure you like them on Facebook, of course. Follow them on Instagram and X. Also, check them out on LinkedIn and any content that they have on YouTube as well. And of course, you have the little donate button there. It is tax season. And if you're interested in donating any of your disposable income to Garden State Equality, again, you can click on the button and your donation is safe, secure, and indeed tax deductible. Christian, there's a little plug there for you. I won't take any compensation whatsoever. I do it free of charge for everybody on my show. But how's 2025 treating you?
Well, I can think of better years in recent memory than what the last 2 months have been, but we are moving forward nonetheless. And I appreciate being invited into conversations like this, where hopefully audiences that need to hear facts and information from different corners of the world will receive that information. So thank you for staying engaged in the topics that are important to Garden State Equality and wanting to bring me on so that way we can talk about some issues that have been on your mind and perhaps the mind of some of your listeners.
No, sure. And again, Christian, and let me be very fair. I'm not saying this to be braggadocious, but the reason I enjoy these conversations with you is because, let's be fair, establishment media in New Jersey continues to let us down, in my opinion, on a multitude of levels. And again, it's an election season. Once again, it's always an election season in New Jersey, whether it's a presidential race, a gubernatorial race, legislative races, municipal races, county races. But here in New Jersey, it's really interesting. I can't recall a time where there's been this much friction and almost not anxiety, but excitement and energy about a gubernatorial race. I mean, obviously we have 10 candidates running for governor between the two, respective parties in New Jersey. And I would argue that this is a time, I think, to really get a sense of where New Jersey is as an electorate, right? And to your point, obviously, to you, the last 2 months have been uncomfortable. I mean, to me as a conservative, I've been happy to some extent, obviously, when it comes to certain legislation being passed or the suggestion of it. But Christian, this is the thing. And folks, again, visit gardenstateequality.org for obviously news about events, all the programs made available to help members of the LGBTQ community, obviously parents, children alike. Obviously, if you're interested in taking action or assistance or any trainings and services, again, check out their website for that. Now, Christian, again, we're still seeing the autopsy of what happened from November 5th. And obviously, I think that New Jersey was a very interesting state. I had been at Wildwood last May for the 45th president's visit to New Jersey, and obviously, great turnout for different reasons. There was a lot of anxiety about the 46th president and the job he was doing or lack thereof, whatever. The point is that, I said to a lot of people, a lot of operatives reach out to me, say, Fern, how do you see Jersey? And I said, well, let's be fair. The 14 electoral votes in New Jersey are pretty safe, but it's going to be tight. Obviously, New Jersey has not flipped red since 1988 with George H.W. Bush. And again, the educator in me likes to give a little bit of a history lesson to our audience, of course. But it came within 5 points. And we're seeing the autopsy, Christian, about what was driving people to vote. Obviously, we saw what happened in 2020. We saw different demographics, college-educated women, men 18 to 25, Hispanics, people of Middle Eastern backgrounds, Asians, Blacks, you name it, okay, that said, you know what, hey, we're going to take a chance, and we don't like what's going on with the 46th president and his vice president. We're going to take a chance on the 45th president. And in record numbers, not just winning the Electoral College, but winning the popular vote decisively, sweeping all the swing states, flipping a lot of counties red, even some counties in New Jersey. Who would have thought of that? But the idea that, hey, New Jersey came within 5 percentage points of going red, I would argue, Christian, it's not because New Jersey's full of bigots or homophobes or Islamophobes or xenophobes or whatever you want to call it. I just think that regular everyday people not just looked at affordability, but looked at social issues as a driving barometer as to why it flipped so drastically from Joe Biden to Donald Trump. How did you see November the 5th and then in the weeks thereafter, bro?
Yeah, I don't think social issues played a significant part in voter turnout in this past presidential election. And I also want to go on the record with you here and saying I do think that New Jersey media does a really nice job covering localized stories. It's an incredibly difficult market to be in, as I'm sure you're aware, being positioned between Philadelphia and New York City, where we get overlooked with our local news all the time by these major networks that are otherwise covering what's taking place in the city. And so considering the resources that our local media has here, I think they do a very nice job, at least covering the issues that are related to work that we do at Garden State Equality. And those stories are really important to be told because they are often the stories of individuals whose lives are impacted by the laws or policies that are often coming up in the larger stories that are taking place nationally. And so when the local news personalizes it by lifting up those voices in their stories, it's really nice to see that type of coverage. Unfortunately, we don't always see that from outlets like the New York Times, where we've seen more recently them fail to really truly cover the issues that have been impacting the transgender community, especially on a local level. So I just wanted to add that in there. And again, thank you for always inviting me onto this show to talk about the issues that are important to the community, because again, that we do have a wide range of different outlets here in the Garden State that we can choose from. And it's clear based on your numbers that you have listeners that may not hear about these stories unless you were talking about them. And so I think it's responsible of you to make sure that these types of issues are discussed even as a so-called conservative or self-identified conservative, no insult there intended. Clearly I am one that is not a self-identified conservative, but I know that you and I find a lot of common ground on the issues that we talk about because we're able to have this type of conversation. And so whether or not what is going to be discussed tonight is in agreement of the people that are listening, I think the most important thing that could be taken away from tonight's episode is that you have two people that are on drastically different sides of a lot of different issues, but are able to come together and have conversations. Now, I think if the reason I'm talking and emphasizing on that is because I think that is not what happened leading up to the presidential election. Is I don't think enough people came together and had conversations, difficult conversations, or conversations at all. They really existed in their echo chambers on social media
Sure.
and in spaces that were comfortable to them leading up into the election. And I think both sides felt pretty confidently that they had it leading up into November. And based on those results, it's clear that only one side had it. And so the lesson here, I think, is to not retreat back into the circles that are comfortable with ourselves, but more so reach out to communities and individuals that may have differing viewpoints from you, not with the goal of changing anyone's opinion, but with the goal of perhaps providing some understanding. And I think if any party is going to win the next election, whether that's Republicans versus Trumpers, which I know is a growing divide, or it's Democrats or independents winning against Republicans, I think that's going to be through the type of conversations that need to be had where there's more understanding and less of a goal of changing people's opinions.
No, fair enough. And folks, if you're just joining us right now live, it's 7:15 on the East Coast here. Do me a favor, like, comment, and share. It takes 5 seconds to do that. And make sure you share tonight's episode of Real Talk here as we are live with Gar State Equality Executive Director Christian Fuscarino joining us live here on the show. Folks, drop some comments. If you have some questions, do so in the comment section. We always look forward to feedback from our audience. Christian, one of the things that was interesting during the presidential election, obviously, and not so much the stats and the numbers afterwards, but it was sort of like the messaging, I think, going into November the 5th, right? And I think that one of the things, and listen, I know you're not much of a sports fan. I know we're Cowboys fans, I think, somehow, right? I think we talked about that once, right? So I'm not sure how much you were watching Sunday football on Sunday Fun. I mean, the Cowboys stink, so it was really nothing to look forward to. But when I'm watching NFL games, one of the ads that was really, I think, run quite often during arguably the most popular sport in North America on Sundays was and I'm sure you saw it, it was a very unique ad from Donald Trump saying, hey, and I'm sort of oversimplifying the ad. I don't want to sort of go through the whole lethargic explanation of it, but the bottom line was, hey, they took some verbiage from Kamala Harris back from like 2018, 2019. I think you kind of know what I'm referring to. And they basically, his handler said, hey, Kamala Harris, she's for they, them. Donald Trump, he's for you. And that messaging in that ad, I'm not sure if you remember it because it got a lot of attention on social media. It got a lot of views and everything. And of course, smart to run it on arguably the biggest eyes, obviously, during the week, and that's during Sunday Fun Day of the NFL. And that messaging and going on shows like Joe Rogan and others that, obviously tailored to an 18 to 25 demographic and everything else, the bottom line is that I think even social issues, listen, affordability, what's going on in foreign conflicts, things of that nature, spending in Washington, these are all big issues. But I think to some extent, social issues resonated with a lot of different demographics, Christian. When you saw that ad, whether you saw it live watching a game or you saw it on YouTube or someone texted to you and said, can you believe this shit, dude? Like, I'm sure maybe you got texts like that. What was your first reaction when you see ads like that? And again, I can't really prove what the effectiveness was percentage-wise, but you got to believe to some extent it resonated with different demographics. Is that fair to say?
Well, that ad that you're referring to is, Trump 101 in fear-mongering and trying to divide people. We know that Trump has no solutions to the real issues that our country faces when it comes to the economy, when it comes to the affordability, when it comes to the cost of eggs, which are still continuing to skyrocket. These are all issues that affect every American. And so I would have liked to have seen a unifying message, which we saw many from the Harris campaign, that also provided some real solutions for what she planned to do after she took the Oval Office. And so we've seen since January 20th, this very much the same tactics that were used in that ad, and that is creating a lot of chaos and fear in people on a lot of issues that are non-issues that affect everyday Americans' day-to-day lives. Most of the executive orders that have been introduced have no real impact on individuals in a positive way across the country, and they've caused a lot of concern and stress for Americans, and it's provided no solutions to the problems that we face day to day. So I'd say, if anything, we got from the ad what we are getting now in the presidency.
Folks, again, if you're just joining us live right now, it is 7:21 on the East Coast, and my guest this evening is a distinguished executive director of Garden Equality. You can check him out at gardenstateequality.org for more resources concerning the LGBTQ community in New Jersey. Check him out once again, gardenstateequality.org. Click the donate button if you wish, folks. Again, your online donation is safe, secure, and tax deductible. Christian Fuscarino, again, the executive director, joins us here. Now, Christian, to be fair, I don't want to sort of, relitigate what happened on November the 5th, but, again, we'll see what happens in the next few months, right? Obviously, when it comes to the economy, what affordability, if at all, becomes tangible. But I think let's try to meet in the middle here. I mean, again, Kamala Harris was the vice president of an administration that saw prices skyrocket, a border wide open, a lot of things to sort of chastise the 46th president on. So I get that there's the Monday morning quarterbacking of, well, there was only 100 days to campaign, but the idea of, well, when I get into office, I'm going to make things more affordable. You're already in office. You could probably try to make things more affordable with Joe. And I think that optic resonated with a lot of people, Christian. That I'm not saying they took that into the ballot box, but, again, like a lot of bad optics, right? The word salads that were constantly coming out of her mouth, bad interviews. Donald Trump had some bad interviews too, to be fair. I'm intellectually honest on this program. But I think just the optic again about affordability and, the economy, again, to be fair, let's see if we can meet in the middle here. It's hard to look at a woman and say, well, when I get into office, this is when I'm going to make things more affordable. You're already in office. You can try to make it affordable now. Christian, that stuck with some people. And that was kind of a hard black cloud to kick. Wouldn't you say?
Well, I think we need to acknowledge that the office of the vice president is extremely limited. And sure. There's very few moments in the last, several presidential administrations where I think you can point to a vice president that has been able to lead with the impact that office has. And so to suggest that she was campaigning from a space where she should have been pointing to her own track record over the previous 4 years it is not a fair one to attach to her. But what I will say is I would have liked to have seen more of highlighting President Biden's accomplishments with her as vice president, because we saw historic gains in the Biden administration. This is an administration that took office during the global pandemic that had halted business and had drove economies into the ground. And we not only did we recover from that, but we saw our stock market perform very well. And so I think it would have been nice for the vice president to have highlighted more of the successes from the Biden administration so that she could have leveraged that to her advantage. As far as all that she said she would do once she took office, I think it was valid policy, solutions that she wanted to really implement if given the opportunity from being in the Oval Office. We know that there's only so much that could be accomplished within the first 4 years. And we would have definitely seen a continuation of the successes of the Biden administration into a Harris administration for 4 years. We would have seen new things introduced. We saw a ton of progress in Obama's second term, considering that he didn't have both, both houses, which Trump has right now. But Obama had that, Obama had that in his first term for the first two.
Yeah, first 2 years, yeah.
We haven't seen that again until right now, which, I will say it looks like Trump is using that to his advantage, which, I wish Obama had done in 2008. I think he was probably trying to work across the aisles too much in that moment, but it was a different political time. Sure. Now we know we have to, grab what we can when we can. And so while I do hope, though, that, type of courage and commitment to working across party lines returns to politics, it's certainly not the climate that we have right now. I'm actually unsure of the climate that we have because there's just so much uncertainty in this moment, which is, all part of the plan of the Trump administration. So, I think that, Vice President Harris ran a really great campaign. I don't think a better campaign could have been run than the one that Vice President Harris did. And it is certainly a sign of what Trump is able to do by winning this past election. It breaks my heart to think of what it's doing to the Republican Party. I see a lot of divide taking place, and also a lot of willingness to not let the party fail. Those two are definitely in conflict of each other.
Sure, that's fair.
I think what we know best here in New Jersey is that a lot of social issues are not a red or blue issue. I've seen a Republican Party that has brought in a lot of progress as it relates to social issues over the years. And I would like to believe that there are individuals who are part of the Republican Party all across the country that shares that same value system. The value system that currently subscribes to, I'm really uncertain at this moment. I will rely on historians to provide more clarity on what is going to be happening over the next 2 to 4 years. Certainly living in it, it is hard to pay attention to everything that's taking place. But we'll certainly be seeing what the impact is from an election standpoint here in New Jersey, where we have our gubernatorial election coming up, and with the potential of a Republican winning, or if the Republican loses, then I think that's a sign that New Jersey Republicans aren't really thrilled with what the Trump administration has been doing. The last thing I'll add on this, and it's really not a topic that I talk too much about because the work that Garden State Equality does is nonpartisan, but it is unfortunate to see some more socially conservative Republicans find a foothold here in New Jersey, where they are able to win elections, because it's not the Republican Party that I've known over the last 2 to 3 decades. And I'd like to see that not continue to be the trend, and for the Republicans that are more moderate on social issues, for them to be able to continue to hold their offices and remain in office, because I think they've made New Jersey the state that is as great as it is. We have the #1 public schools in the nation, which is a point that I'm particularly proud of, because New Jersey is an extremely diverse state. And I think diversity is part of our strength, and that is why we have the #1 public schools in the nation. I think that the laws and policies that we're passing are some of the best that our country is seeing, and it is because our legislature is a very diverse legislature that uplifts the voices of many different communities. And so, as we just saw the budget address by Governor Murphy, where front and center remained diversity while also talking about a strong economy, I like to think that as we move forward past the Murphy administration, that we continue to commit to having a strong economy while also not selling away the fact that New Jersey is a beautifully diverse state.
All right, a lot to unpackage there. And obviously, being the economic policy nerd that I am, obviously what you just said right now just caught my eye, Christian. But again, this gubernatorial race is very interesting. I don't recall a gubernatorial race in my adult life being this diverse in terms of the candidates from both parties. But what I'm hearing, right, and I went to Rider University a few weeks ago when David Wallstein and the New Jersey Globe hosted the debate for both parties, obviously. And I was there doing a post-game wrap-up on both. And I was there in the press scrum. I asked some questions. Candidates all answered my questions, which I was very, very proud of. And folks, if you haven't checked out my post-game wrap-up for both debates, check it out. It's on the Real Talk page. But one of the things that caught my eye, though, Christian, and you mentioned about, the governor's address, obviously about economics and the economy. But I think it's rich, man, that, the governor now who, and again, I'm no fan of Chris Christie, but, when Chris Christie left office in 2018, we looked at a budget of around probably $29, almost $30 billion. In the 8 years since Phil Murphy took office in January of 2018, it's almost doubled. And I get it. We can talk about the pandemic and everything else, but what we've seen, though, Christian, in fairness, though, we've seen a bloating of property taxes. I own multiple homes. They're the highest in the nation, okay, on an average of over $9,300. So, the gas tax went up again, right, to supposedly go into the Transportation Trust Fund. The roads are still as shitty as ever in New Jersey. Let's be honest. Tolls have gone up on the Turnpike and Parkway, respectively. Where the money's going, affordability. Yet, though, even the Democrat Party candidates are railing about affordability. And I would argue that, to me, again, you don't have to be a political scientist to know that that's sort of a backhanded swipe at the governor. Like, well, yeah, we have to campaign on affordability because New Jersey just isn't affordable. Now, again, we can sort of point fingers at who's to blame, whether it's Governor Murphy, the legislature, but who, let's be honest, though, man, since 2004 has been predominantly Democrat run with big majorities. So it's not like Republicans or conservatives have had a say in this in the state. They just haven't. But having said that, I just think it's sort of a bit of a campaign, red flag to, especially if you're a Democrat, to say, well, we have to campaign on affordability. Well, of course, you're the governor for 8 years has made the state unaffordable. So I think we have to be careful about how we look at the governor's budget address, where now there's a hiring freeze. There's language about, let's tighten our belts a little bit. Well, where was that in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2022, 2023? So I think for New Jersey voters, this election cycle, man, really presents a unique opportunity, I think, for voters to look at where New Jersey's going. And to your point about, the economy, we'll find out. When it comes to social issues, it's interesting because when you make reference about socially conservative Republicans, again, man, it's 52-28 in the assembly for Democrats. I believe it's somewhere between probably 20, maybe 24-16 in the Senate. I think that's around the number. I think that's the majority, if memory serves me correct. These are pretty solid majorities. So the idea that socially conservative Republicans, are having an influence on policy, with all due respect, bro, like that's just not true, because Democrats, again, have controlled the state house for over 20 years. So when budgets are being passed, or there's driver licenses being given to illegals, when there is taxpayer dollars being put into a legal fund to represent illegals, when it comes to curriculum, which we'll get to in a moment, that some parental groups are objecting to, Republicans can't do anything to stop it. So when things are going on in New Jersey and there's an uproar about it, it's one party that's been in control in Trenton, though, man.
Well, and it's that party is the exact reason that we've had property tax relief with the Anchor program here in New Jersey that has provided rebates for families up to $1,500 for homeowners. The real tax price crisis, from what I remember, was under Christie's, $3 billion in tax cuts for New Jersey corporations. And you mentioned the gas tax, but that was locked in under Chris Christie in 2016.
Yeah.
So I think, if we want to go, tit for tat on each of the issues that are affecting New Jersey's economy, I'd like to point out that we've fully funded New Jersey's pension program in New Jersey. Yeah. Nearly every single year the Murphy administration has been in office. We have also brought in a ton of new revenue with the film industry, with Netflix going to be opening up studios in New Jersey. That's going to bring a lot of job opportunities and help the economy here. And so I think that you really have to, affordability has always been an issue in New Jersey, but it has not gotten worse under the Murphy administration. And not only has it continued, but our credit rating has gotten better. We've funded our pension program. We've offered property tax relief. We're expanding affordability for education. And so that's also true that it's happened under the Murphy administration, and will likely continue to be a priority if the next governor wants to be responsible with what they're inheriting from what has been a long line of affordability issues for New Jersey. But we are a state that has a great responsibility. We have a terrific economy. We're located between two of the United States' largest U.S. cities, and so cost of living is going to be high. It's going to be something that we need to continue to work on, and that's why the programs that we offer to families, like the Anchor program, are so important, and making sure that families are able to purchase a home and pay their rent and be able to go to the grocery store and be able to put enough food on the table. But these are all issues that have been a priority under the Murphy administration, and it's not always been the case under previous governors, especially under the Christie administration, who I know that you are not a fan.
Oh, no, no. Listen, to be fair, I'm no fan of Chris Christie. And to the point you mentioned about the gas tax, you're right. It did originate, during the Christie era. There's no question. My biggest pet peeve is just, in the years since then, the legislature could have done something to either stall it or freeze it, very much like like the increase in tolls. And to your point about anchor, now correct me if I'm wrong, brother, but again, it's, you're basically giving me back the property taxes I already paid. So it's like, okay, cool. I like the payment back, but these are my tax dollars anyway. It seems like the language coming out of Trenton sometimes is, oh, well, here's a benefit to you. This is what, here's not a gift, but, look how generous we're being by giving you this tax relief. These are our property taxes that we're paying to begin with.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, wait a second, like you're giving me back my own money that I
Right.
gave you from the start. So it's like, wait a second.
I think if Trump was the governor of New Jersey, the governor would be saying, "Look how generous we are by giving this back to you." But that no one's asking for anyone to look at how generous anyone is, and that perhaps is why Democrats lose elections. But we can save that conversation for another time.
I mean, not New Jersey, though, to be fair, right? I mean, not New Jersey, though.
Well, and from your mouth to November's, ballot boxes.
Well,
So
it's interesting you mentioned that. And
perhaps as we move into November, we should be talking about the fact that we should be talking about the anchor program more,
Sure.
because I think that what Democrats get wrong, and perhaps we'll find some common ground here, is that we get baited into talking about social issues that are non-issues, especially in a state like New Jersey, where we've had these protections on the law for decades. And I really hope the Democratic Party doesn't fall for that as we head into the November election, because we know that these policies work here in the Garden State because they've existed for a very long time. And so when folks are trying to get us to talk about social issues, we should be talking about social issues that we don't currently have protections for, that we need to expand. And then we should be talking about the things that impact everybody. And what I mean by that is, I don't know about you, but I had eggs this morning. And so the cost of eggs mattered to me as a gay person. They matter to a trans person, and
Sure.
they matter to you. And so that's what we should remain focused on is the cost of living and making sure programs like the Anchor program continue.
Well, to be fair, I'm not a medical doctor, but I mean, Christian, eggs are bad for you. I mean, they raise your cholesterol. It's not good for you. I don't eat eggs. So, I mean,
Don't eat eggs?
No, I don't. I really don't eat eggs. I mean, I understand products contain eggs and, some things we consume, no question. The reason I stopped eating eggs, and again, I'm an old man compared to you, brother, it just raises your cholesterol. So I'm glad to be rid of eggs.
Moderation.
Sure. No. And to your point about affordability, sure.
We'll get your levels down.
Sure. And to the point about affordability, let's sort of get into that because that's a big issue in this gubernatorial election, the assembly races, obviously. But I think to your point about social issues, it's very interesting to me because, again, going back to being president at Rider University, and again, thanks to them and David Wildstein, along with the New Jersey Globe and Mike Rasmussen and Rider University and all the great people there, Joey Fox and Matt Rooney, along with everybody else that was in attendance. But one of the things that was interesting about not just affordability, but the social issues, right? I mean, obviously there was a distinct contrast when the Democrat candidates, whether it was former Senate President Steve Sweeney, whether it's current NGEA President Sean Spiller, U.S. Representatives Gottheimer and Sherrill collectively, whether it's Mayors Baraka and Fulop collectively. Obviously, 6 very different Democrats that are talking about 6 very different things, whether it's affordability, social issues. And one of the big social issues that was discussed, not just with the Democrat primary, but the Republican one was, well, how are we going to look at social issues such as curriculum in our public schools? Obviously, we know that 5756 has come under considerable scrutiny. So much so that we have school districts that have, in some cases, some school boards have reversed it, have chosen not to adopt it. And obviously, that's raised the ire of Attorney General Matt Platkin, who's taken some L's lately, in litigation. More on that later. And certainly, it's raised the ire of the governor. Having said that, in probably the most simplistic way possible, what is 5756? And from your perspective, from Garden State Equality, why does that matter so much to you?
Well, so one has nothing to do with the other as far as inclusive curriculum, but as far as the conversation that's taking place in schools, I think it's always been a perspective conversation in what has taken place at a few of New Jersey school districts. And that is, we have 600 plus school districts in New Jersey that have been complying with the law that was signed under Governor Christie, that requires schools to prioritize students' safety. And so I view that as a non-issue because 600 plus school districts are complying and everything's working fine as it was intended. It was such a reasonable ask that Governor Christie signed it into law. And then out of nowhere, there's this national wave that has come through the Garden State, and has convinced some school boards that this is an issue that they should run for school board on. Some of those individuals win those elections, and then they follow through on their campaign promises and rescind the policies or pass a varying policy depending on the district. And what's unfortunate more than anything is that those districts and the students of those districts and the taxpayers of those districts have become victim to having school board members that have no goal other than this issue as being their priority. And that makes me sad because New Jersey public schools are, number one in the nation, as I mentioned earlier. Our students deserve Board of Education members that are laser focused on student safety, student academic performance, and taxpayers want a school district that is run fiscally responsibly, that provides the best education for their students while also, not running the district in a way where it requires taxes to go up. And in those few districts that went out of their way to change a policy that didn't need to be changed because it was a non-issue, it cost those districts a ton in legal fees. And it is my hope that we are going to move past this, move past it from a standpoint where people understand better now that this is something that doesn't need to be addressed. And most importantly, without this guidance, the New Jersey law against discrimination requires school districts to offer the same protections for all of their students. And so, if the districts decide they don't want the guidance, then that's their decision, and it doesn't really change anything for the students' day-to-day experience. But it's just a really weird thing to laser in on to change, especially when the New Jersey law against discrimination continues to protect those students. And then as far as curriculum, we were the first state in the nation to teach LGBTQ inclusive lessons across all relevant subject areas. I don't know what year now we're in on that. Is year 4 potentially, maybe more. And it's been going great. We see, the effects of young people learning about LGBTQ individuals' contributions to society. We imagine that there are more young people when they're learning about Langston Hughes. They now know that Langston Hughes was LGBTQ identified, and that's important. It's important for a few reasons. One, and I know you know this because we've talked about it on this show before. One is for LGBTQ young people, they see themselves reflected in the lessons that they're learning. They know that they're not alone. And then for other students, they see that LGBTQ people may be the same people that are their favorite author or their favorite athlete or their favorite scientist. And that's important because we want to make sure that bullying rates decrease. And since this curriculum has been in schools for a few years now, we know that rates of bullying decrease when schools are teaching inclusive lessons. It's a win for everybody because bullying doesn't just affect LGBTQ students, it affects the entire school climate. And so if we're able to get those rates lowered, then we know we're doing a good job. And we also, want to make sure that we continue to have that academic success at the same time.
Well, Christian, again, I think some parents and activists that have gone to school board meetings, I think that, listen, some of their concerns are, listen, I've worked in higher education. And for anyone that knows, when you work in higher ed and you're designing the syllabus as a professor, I have autonomy there. Okay. There's no, other than just making sure I devise a syllabus and submit it to my department chair. That's the oversight basically. But, when you work in our public school system in New Jersey, obviously, whether it's elementary, middle school, or high school, obviously there's it's procedural. You have to create lesson plans. You have to submit them to your department chair. They have to get authorized. It's an ongoing process for anyone that doesn't understand the differences between, regular, Board of Ed education and higher education. But the bottom line is, I think that some parents are concerned that, listen, not every school district is the same. I think we have some that are really progressive, like Montclair, for example, or others. And some parents are just concerned. Listen, I've seen it with my own eyes. It's not like I'm imagining this. Teachers can take matters into their own hands, talk about some curriculum that maybe some parents aren't thrilled about in the public school. And again, because their tax dollars are paying for school budgets, for books, for everything else that goes into the expenditures in a school district. I think some parents maybe want to voice concerns. And, the idea that, going to school board meetings and parents, some parents, again, listen, I know some parents out there can have bad agendas and are ill-intentioned. I understand all that. I get it. But there are some parents that are not ill-intentioned, that mean well, that want to make sure that their kids maybe aren't exposed to certain books in their libraries, that maybe librarians or certain administrators, don't, or should not, in the parents' eyes, be exposing their kids or making curriculum available that maybe is inappropriate for certain ages. And I think that, listen, we live in a very tribal time, bro. But the idea that parents that go there that mean well are being vilified by school board members or faculty and administrators, I just think is wrong. I think that there are parents that are looking out for their kids. There are parents that are concerned about certain content being made available. And listen, I get it. I'm an old man compared to you, man. And I get it. When I grew up, there wasn't the internet. There wasn't the accessibility to just go on. You have a computer in your hand when it comes to a smartphone. I get all this stuff. But the idea that some parents are concerned about what books are in libraries, no one's looking to ban books. No one's looking to ostracize librarians. But some parents are just concerned about what kids are exposed to and whether some adults are being complicit of it. Maybe you understand some parents' concerns that maybe it's not overblown and maybe they have maybe a legitimate reason to be a little suspicious or just concerned for their kids, man.
Well, of course, parents want what's best for their kids, and they should have a voice in their children's education. That's the whole purpose of school board of education meetings, where the public can come and express their opinions. But making sure kids are informed about the world around them isn't about exposing them to something harmful, right? So the content that is included in the lessons that they're learning is vetted by curriculum writers at the local school districts, which are hired by the Board of Education, which are individuals from the community that are voted into that office to fulfill the duties of that office. And so for there to be any lessons about diversity, equity, and inclusion in a school, or there to be a book in a library that includes the broad range of what diversity, equity, and inclusion is, it has to be vetted in a way that a system exists to do that. And so I am not a curriculum writer. And so I would never walk into a school board meeting and say, this curriculum is inappropriate. I would leave that to individuals who are education experts, who have doctorates like yourself, to make that determination along with a group of other individuals that are education experts on what's considered best. But parents do have the right to express their concerns, and they can go to those meetings to do that. That system exists, that participation in our child's education exists in that avenue. And I encourage everybody to go and have this. I think where the issue is when people are going and expressing feelings that are not rooted in reality, which is understandably a very scary position to be in.
Give me an example for our audience that maybe isn't aware. Give us an example of, to your point, about situations that maybe you've seen at school board meetings or has been brought to your attention. What alarms you specifically?
Yeah, so what alarms me, and it's really grotesque type of information that's put out there, is like this false narrative that there's inappropriate content being delivered to our children in schools. And more times than not, the type of imagery that I'm seeing on, platforms like Twitter and X is not actually what's in New Jersey's public libraries or schools. It's also really important to remember what's age appropriate, and so you may see something that is on those platforms that is being taught to young people, that is for a certain age group, and it's not being taught to kindergarten students, but that social media post is saying that. And so I see a lot of well-intended parents show up really concerned because of this type of content that is allegedly being taught in schools. And I'm glad for that concern, because it would not be appropriate for that type of content to be delivered in schools. But that's not what's happening here. Is we're seeing a lot of misinformation put out there to support these false narratives, to support these candidates for Board of Education that want to get on, who have no agenda other than an anti-LGBTQ agenda. And so it's important to be educated. It's important to ask questions. And I've never been to a school board meeting where a Board of Education has not been willing to answer the questions or to provide transparency on the content that's being questioned. But what's important to remember is that all of the content that is delivered, whether it's a book in the library or a lesson that's being taught in school, is put together by subject matter experts that are hired in those positions because they went to school, they know age appropriate, and they want to make sure that young people are seeing the world in the classroom, so that way they are best prepared when they go out into the real world.
Speaking of books, Christian, I really want to pick your brain about this because it's an issue that really just creates a lot of conversation. And obviously, whether it's happening in public schools was, case in point, for anyone that's not aware, the week before, about 2 weeks before Thanksgiving in New Jersey, over that weekend is the annual NGEA convention that takes place in Atlantic City for the New Jersey Education Association, the state's leading teachers union. And certainly, I've attended, and I've also had people attend there and send me still shots and screenshots of things that go on in there. And whether it's discussions about curriculum or activities that the union encourages in our public schools. And I think one of the activities that gets a lot of discussion, man, and you probably know where I'm going with this, is drag queen story time, right? Reading to children, whether it's in our public schools, whether it's going on at a public library, or even at a private bookstore, which are three very different entities. But let me just go with the premise that, Christian, I know a lot of school teachers that, pay membership dues that are pretty exorbitant every pay period, every 2 weeks. And when they go to Atlantic City to the NGA convention, they're seeing some displays and some behavior and some, whether it's, presentations during the convention about curriculum, or what should be encouraged in our public schools for our kids, or even at the public library level, at a local, at a municipal level. And case in point, nearby in Hoboken, Mayor Ravi Bala and the administration and parts of his council team that support him, every June during Pride Month, they make sure to have drag queen story time at the Hoboken Public Library, and that's been sort of a fixture for Ravi Bala since he's taken office in 2018. Having said that, some parents have raised concerns. Like, listen, you're doing this at a private bookstore off Washington Street, which is sort of the main avenue in Hoboken, sure. But if you're doing it at a Hoboken Public Library, some parents are concerned, like, wait a minute, my tax dollars are paying for the public library to sustain itself. And we're seeing drag queen story time for kids as young as 5 years old. And some parents are just like, wait a second, like, why are we exposing kids as young as 5? I mean, I remember when I was 5, dude. I mean, I didn't know the Electoral College from Ramapo College. I could barely tie my shoelaces. All I cared about was baseball, video games, whatever. The bottom line is, for some parents, they're concerned. They're like, wait a minute, why do we feel the need to expose kids to this? I mean, you want to have drag queen story time, go to a senior home. Read to, I don't know, the visually impaired. Some parents are just like, wait a minute, why are we exposing our kids to this? And I don't think it makes them bigots. I don't think it makes them homophobes or whatever. I just think it makes some parents that they're concerned. I mean, maybe we can meet in the middle on this. I mean, what's overblown and what isn't?
Well, I think what's overblown is that there's anything to be concerned about with drag queen story time. It's a kids curated story hour with a drag queen. It's always going to be age appropriate content. It's about creativity. It's about fun. I've been to several of them, and I've seen kids have the time of their lives. It's a lot of enjoyment. I don't know what year it was when you were 5 years old, but I'm sure you saw the movie Aladdin, and the genie was dressed up in drag. Drag has been around for a very, very long time, and we've all been exposed to it through the years. I think that it's such a fun way to encourage young people to get into reading more, because it's about freedom of expression, and the books that are being read are children's books by drag queens. If parents don't want to bring their kid to drag queen story hour at the public library, they don't have to,
Sure.
and that's their choice. And so I think it's wrong for anyone to deny someone else the opportunity to go to an event like that could be inspiring and encouraging and exciting and creative, and create and support creative expression, for another young person, just because they choose to not bring their child into that environment.
But Christian, I think you remember when you were 5. I know I mean, obviously, it's much later for me, but dude, we're pretty impressionable at 5.
Yeah.
We're pretty impressionable. We still believe in the Easter Bunny, still believe in Santa. We're impressionable. And for some parents to say, hey, okay, I don't have to bring my kid to this. But the idea that, again, I'm not trying to be inappropriate here, but let's sort of talk, well, real talk, as they say. I mean, the idea, again, that, you're choosing to have someone, and you're right, the examples historically, and in art, and in music, and in cinema, I get it, they've been there. I don't disagree with that. But the idea, I think, still remains that, again, dude, kids are very impressionable at 5. The idea of, I don't want to say confusing them, but the idea that, a grown man dressed in drag is reading them. And I get it. Children's books, it's content that's for children. I get it. No one's asking them to read adult themed material. But I think that, Christian, and I'm trying to be respectful as I say this, the idea that some parents look at this and say, wait a minute, exposing my kid to something like this, there's a time and a place for everything. There's a time and a place that's age appropriate for kids to be exposed to this. And when parents voice that concern, again, it doesn't make them, transphobic or homophobes or whatever, or bigoted. I'm just concerned with the fact that, like, when parents object to this, and I know you're not guilty of it because you don't do it. Okay, we're friends. I follow you, and you follow whatever. I know you're not guilty of this, but there are advocates and activists that immediately, when they hear this language from parents at either school board meetings or parents that go to public libraries and protest, however, hopefully peacefully, because nobody should be bullied, nobody should be assaulted, nobody should be confronted in a violent or hostile manner. But the idea that some parents just look at this and say, wait a second, why are we exposing our kids to this? There's a time and a place for everything. I don't think it makes them unreasonable. I don't think it makes them bigoted, but there are some that immediately play the card, well, you know what, these parents, this is what's wrong with conservatives or Republicans or whatever, parents groups. And I just think we have to get away from that, man. We can agree to disagree without, I think, vilifying each other. And that's the concern I have. Because again, when I look at this, I know some parents are well-intentioned. They're just concerned that a 5-year-old who doesn't, and again, I'll try to keep this PG, who doesn't know their ass from their elbows, who can barely tie their shoelaces, okay, who can barely read and write and have any sort of cognitive abilities. I know when I was 5, I was dumb as shit. Okay, like I remember not being cognitively, adequate yet. I'm 5. My brain is still developing. Parents see this and they're like, wait a second, why are we exposing our kids to this? I don't think it makes them bad people, Christian.
Well, I think that I cannot begin to understand why a parent would not want their child to attend a drag queen story hour, because it is a moment of fun, creativity, freedom of expression. It is a children's book that is being read. It's just a blast. And so I'm not sure what the reasoning would be to not want to bring your child, other than for there to be some type of implicit bias within that individual's viewpoint on the world. I'm sure that when Looney Tunes, had the episode or many episodes of Bugs Bunny dressing up in drag, I'm sure there were families that, turned that off the television, or perhaps never let
Sure.
their children watch Looney Tunes. And so I don't think it's a new concept that parents are trying to curate the content that their kids are watching. And it is their right to
Sure.
determine what is right for their children. But for there to be this blanket statement that it is your right to, control the content that your children are exposed to, and by the way, you are not considered, having a bias or a bigot, regardless of the decision,
Mhm.
I think is false. Like, a duck is a duck, right? Like if I don't want to bring my child somewhere because X people are there that I do not want to expose my child to, that is some type of bias there, especially when it's rooted in not, a real concern. Which again, I don't know what the concern would be
I,
to
I mean,
not
I mean,
bring
but
a child
Christian,
to a child appropriate book reading.
but Christian, when we talk about bias, I mean, again, I'll sort of just simplify this, not along cultural lines, but I think just maybe generational lines, but I think just the optic of it. I mean, some parents would just say, and again, I really want to hear your answer to this specifically. Some parents might just say, "Hey, it's just not acceptable or normal to see a grown man dress up in drag." And then again, one thing is Bugs Bunny in a cartoon. Some parents might just say, Christian, listen, this just isn't normal to see a grown man dressed up in drag, and then to compound it, to think that, hey, let's sit there and read to children. And kids are, to some extent, some parents might say, wait a minute, what we're basically, the message we're conveying here is that this is acceptable, that it's okay to dress this way. And some parents might object to that. I don't think it makes them bad people, Christian, in all fairness, bro.
You are entitled to that belief. I think that it makes them people that I would really like to have a conversation with to help them understand why this is completely age appropriate content, and how exposing your children to different things in the world is going to be helpful to their development.
No, sure. I mean, again, but the rebuttal by some would be like, sure, when cognitively they can process this. At 5, again, Christian, maybe you were more advanced than I was at 5. I know at 5 I was dumb. Okay, I could barely tie my shoes. All I cared about was playing baseball, little league, video games.
You
Again,
keep
it was very.
you
I was
keep bringing up 5, and it's like, I'm not dressed in drag because I saw Mrs. Doubtfire when I was 5 years old. So I don't understand why any 5-year-old seeing someone dressed in drag would, change their trajectory, or for it, it to be inappropriate. So I just think exposing kids to what they're going to see in their life as an adult is, what they're going to see on television is totally normal. It's totally a normal experience. It's interesting to me that this is even something that is being debated. And you live in Hudson County. You know the diversity that is all around
oh,
us.
sure, yeah.
And so it's just so interesting to me that we are having a conversation about something that is child appropriate content, because it is a drag queen story hour with children's books, and geared toward children at a public library, really starting from a belief that children should be inspired to read more and have more creativity through their reading, and see
Sure.
that type of expression. So it's just such a normal, and I hate to use that word, but it's just such a normal day-to-day experience to me. And I feel like for so many people, especially in regions like Hudson County and New York City, where we just are exposed to this type of thing that is about creativity and expression and art form, it would be like, not wanting kids to listen to different genres of music because that genre is, too exciting, or it's, too abstract.
I mean, but that happened though, right? Like parental advisory lyrics has been around for some time.
No, no. I mean, I
Yeah,
said, so genre meaning age appropriate, age
sure.
appropriate. So like, are you not going to have your children listen to musicals because, you're afraid that they're going to start singing instead of reading. I can't even think of a scenario where you would restrict a genre because it wouldn't be appropriate. And so drag is just a different type of art form. And again, parents are entitled to not bring their children, but to be against the issue here is that there are parents against drag queen story hours. And why are we restricting that type of content that is about creativity and freedom of expression for some families just because your family has determined that it's not appropriate for you?
No, I mean, listen, fair enough. And again, the debate continues because when it happens at a municipal level, right, whether it's a public library or it happens in a public school, some parents are just concerned about, well, listen, what are we exposing kids to? And again, some parental rights groups have gone to school board meetings. They've raised hell. I've had multiple parental rights groups on this show talking about their concerns as parents. And again, the debate rages on. Another debate that rages on, obviously, along the lines of parental rights groups and certainly clashing with LGBTQ groups, especially in New Jersey, has been the presence of trans people, right? And I think that, Christian, listen, there's going to be a fundamental disagreement, right? Going back to last year, whether it's the election or whether it's, platforms, as they say, right? I mean, to the example we mentioned before about this, the ad that ran during football season, right? That Donald Trump ran on Kamala Harris. And, to some people, for example, and again, listen, some people would say to me, Fernando, you don't maybe understand the literature correctly. You don't understand what transition really means and how complicated it is and how, time consuming it is and expensive and things of that nature. Right. But one of the things that, for example, and listen, whether it was taken out of context or not, just a simple fact, for example, and this is, going back to the Obama years, right? We had a soldier who was incarcerated, Private Manning, who decided to transition while in prison, if you recall that issue. That case specifically created some uproar, right? Certainly, that the transition happened while he was incarcerated. I believe, if memory serves me correct, I think it was some espionage case. I think he sold some secrets or leaked some secrets. The point is that this person decided to transition while in prison. Christian, some people would just say, listen, you want to live your life, God bless you. My tax dollars shouldn't go to that. You want to transition? God bless you. That's on your nickel. Why my tax dollars should go to pay for that while you're incarcerated or whatever other process exists, I don't think it's unreasonable as someone who's a fiscal conservative and like, hey, if we can avoid not spending money when we don't have to, I'm all for that. But again, that was sort of the premise of what was taken maybe out of context with then, U.S. Senator Kamala Harris out of California as she was running for president in 2020. Some people might just be like, well, when it comes to trans people, hey, that's on you. That's your business. But the idea that tax dollars should go to that, I don't think is unreasonable, Christians, that some people might just be like, wait a second, let's pump the brakes on that. Your thoughts, sir?
Well, my thoughts are that, trans people in prison deserve to be treated with dignity and basic human rights, just like everybody else who is currently in custody. Denying them appropriate housing or medical care isn't just about fairness. It's about cruelty. And the reality is that trans inmates, especially trans women, face extremely high rates of violence and sexual assault when housed in the wrong facilities. And so that's why it's so important that individuals that are in custody are able to access the facility in accordance with their gender identity and not be put in harm's way. We provide healthcare to everybody that's in custody. Trans individuals should be no different in the treatment and care that they get. And I think it's that simple. Whether or not we are, taking trans people into custody at higher rates for nonviolent crimes is another conversation I think is worth having, because I think we are looking at a system that has disproportionately incarcerated trans individuals because of their identities and the nonviolent crimes that they have committed. And so if it's really a concern of taxpayers that we're providing, life-saving care to trans individuals that are incarcerated, then I would hope that there be that same concern about making sure that our system isn't disproportionately incarcerating trans individuals.
Christian, when it comes to the presence of trans people and the debate that continues, obviously, whether it's documentaries that are made, whether it's podcast hosts that talk about trans people, I mean, I'm sure you've heard all the rhetoric, you've seen it, whether it's brought to your attention, whether you face it at town hall type of Q&A forums and things of that nature. I mean, there are just going to be some people that say, hey, listen, you're born to the body you're born in. The idea that, are there some people born in the wrong body? Sure. I mean, we hear that argument all the time. But I think that, when we look back to November the 5th, we think about the exit polling. We think about, again, the autopsy of what happened, right? Certainly for you as a registered Democrat, I suspect, right? The election didn't go your way. There's still a discussion about the autopsy. What went wrong here? Was it messaging? Was it the candidate? Whatever the case may be. What we're seeing, for example, with some social issues, and Bill Maher had a great couple of weeks on this when it came to talking about, social issues. And I think that some people, for example, look at Bill Maher and think it's fair to say Bill Maher is a classical liberal. There's nothing conservative about Bill Maher whatsoever, I would argue, being a conservative myself. But I think as a classical liberal, he was pretty much getting a lot of flack from progressives, those on the left that like, hey, you sound like that cranky old man who's screaming at kids to stay off their grass or their lawn. But I think that he looked at it as like, there are just some social issues that regular everyday people were just not getting behind. And for some people, though, Christian, I mean, again, there's this sort of thought process that, if you're a man and you're born with a penis, no amount of, procedures or whatever transition you want to go through is going to eliminate or negate what chromosomes you have. By and large, if you're a woman, no matter whatever surgeries or transition you go through, no matter if you chop off your hair, you're still going to be a woman with a uterus, with ovaries and a vagina. Some people just, again, whether it's the social issues, that climate that dominated the presidential election, and maybe even to some extent what happens in New Jersey, there are just going to be some people that say, Christian, with all due respect, listen, trans people, gay people, whoever, should not be bullied. They should not be victimized. They should not be harassed. I'm all for that. Okay? No one should be. I said to you before we went on the air, there's lots of reasons to dislike me, but in my lifetime, I know that being straight is never going to be one. So I get it. I'm never going to face that scrutiny, that harassment, that vitriol. I get that. But for some people, though, Christian, some people are going to be like, hey, what you're trying to do, but generically, like the narrative or the rhetoric is you're trying to get me to believe in something that, quite frankly, I just can't get behind because of science or biology. And quite frankly, man, maybe we can meet in the middle on this. I don't think it makes them transphobes. I don't think it makes them homophobes or bigots. I just think it makes them people that, quite frankly, are just like, hey, that just isn't for me. I just can't get behind it. Hey, do you live your life, no problem. But no offense, don't force me to acquiesce to something that I just don't want to acquiesce to. When you hear that narrative, what comes to mind, bro?
Well, I'm not really sure what the question is, because I think it's important to remember that we are not interested in talking about non-issues as an organization. And I say that to say, gender identity and gender expression have been protected underneath the New Jersey law against discrimination for nearly 3 decades. And also we've had policies that have protected trans individuals throughout the state government. And so why are we talking about, certain trans issues in election cycles when it's a non-issue in our state? And we're being forced to talk about this by conservatives that are interested in wedge politics or, creating this false narrative that there's an issue that needs to be addressed when there's not. And, here in New Jersey, that's a perfect example of that. So if the question is, are we asking folks to get behind something? Well, I think, human decency is something that we should be asking everybody to get behind. as far as like a full understanding of, what it means to be trans, I would hope that we would take the time to understand our fellow human beings. But I really just need individuals to not get in the way of social progress by, voting for politicians that seek to undermine the progress that we've made. I think that's like the real issue here. So if somebody is voting for an elected official that is seeking to roll back LGBTQ progress, then I would say that that individual is, likely someone that has some type of bias or is, bigoted, is transphobic, is homophobic, depending on the issue. And that unfortunately is the reality of when you support a candidate that is made it a number one priority or a top priority to roll back social progress. I really wish I'm not really sure where you were going with this, but I really wish we lived in a world where if people just didn't understand something and they didn't want to be identified with, an identity that is like racist or transphobic or homophobic or bigoted, then they would just not act out on that feeling. But the issue is that people show up and they support candidates who are promising to roll back LGBTQ inclusive curriculum. They support candidates that want to ban individuals from participating, in certain activities. They are looking to roll back policies and laws. And, that is a very strong position to take. It's not a neutral position to take. And so if you're taking a strong and active position like that, then that's something where you're seeking to lessen the rights of another individual. And so that does make you a bigot. That does make you a homophobe. Now, I think that doesn't mean you have to remain that. And so if there's this idea that I don't want to be a bigot, I don't want to be called a bigot, I just don't want X people to have X rights. Well, then let's talk about why you don't want those people to have those rights. And then maybe by the end of our conversation, we can get to a point where, maybe you don't get it, but you understand enough that no one should lose rights simply because of who they are. And that's the type of progress I'd really like to see happen. If I do something and someone calls me, racist, then I'm going to say, what did I do? Help me understand what I did for you to believe that I'm racist. And then it is through that learning and understanding that will not change the fact that it did something that was racist. It is through the learning and understanding that I can hopefully try to be more actively anti-racist in the next time that I'm in a situation where now I understand better. And everyone should have that type of perspective. Everyone should want to have that type of understanding for something that maybe they just don't understand or get in the first place, especially legislators.
Sure.
Got,
which, and folks, by the way, it's a little after. It's about 8:15 here on the East Coast. My guest tonight is the Distinguished Executive Director of Garden State Equality, Christian Fuscarino. He's been a great gentleman to be on with me as long as we have. It's been a great conversation. The time flies when you're having insightful, informative conversations, which we have here on Real Talk every week on Jersey First. So, Christian, before I let you go, we could go on for 3 more hours and still not get to everything. But I want to pick your brain. It is an election year. We started the show a little bit about this. I sort of want to close the show on it. It's 2025. Obviously, it's March. Really, it's the first Monday of March. A lot obviously going on before the June 10th primary. And, I'm not going to mention their names, but I talked to gubernatorial candidates on both sides of the aisle at Rider University in the green room. Not going to say their names. I don't want to blow up their spots. But, they were like, Fernando, how'd I do? How do you see this? What's going on in Jersey? And I said, listen, so-and-so. And I said, listen, it's June 10th is almost a lifetime away, it feels like. It's a few months away. And there are certain variables that have to be in play. If the economy recovers to some extent, and we're seeing obviously legislation about no taxes on tips or overtime or Social Security benefits. That's great. I think that's going to help people's pockets, obviously. Perhaps not funding unnecessary wars that we're a part of. Who knows? Whatever. The point is that by the time Mother's Day comes around in mid to late May, especially around Democrats, the idea, see, it worked for Governor Murphy and it worked for Democrats in 2018. Like, resist, 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 fight, fight, fight. We hate Trump. We hate Trump. That worked in 2018. That's what got Governor Murphy elected, theoretically, right? Now, in 2025, if the economy is somewhat maybe improving, maybe gas prices are going down, we're seeing that obviously we're enforcing federal immigration law, things of that nature. You know, for on the Democrat side, to some of the candidates in the green room, I said, you know, if these things aren't in your favor, just saying fight, 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 and resist, resist, resist isn't going to win you over. In a state that came close to flipping red, Democrats have to stand for something more than just like, well, I hate Trump, and that's it. I'm sorry to everyone out there, to all the operatives watching this show, because I know they do. I'm sorry. You're going to have to earn your dollars this election cycle. You're going to have to run on substance and policy. And I think if Democrats want to continue the playbook from November, have at it. The identitarian politics, subscribing to woke stuff, have at it. But I don't think it's a winning formula, Christian. Are you concerned that maybe Democrats haven't learned their lesson going into 2025 in New Jersey?
Well, you know, again, the work that Garden State Equality does is nonpartisan, and you know, we were really glad to host candidates from both
I saw that, yeah, great.
both political parties and on our roundtable, and
that was great.
you know, the responses were all great to the questions that, you know, the responses were varying among the candidates, but it was great to receive responses on issues that are impacting the community from all the candidates that participated. And what I mean by that is we want to make sure that no matter who wins in the next election, is going to be a governor that not only wants to continue the historic progress that we've seen under the Murphy administration for the LGBTQ community, but also expand on some of the items that we would like to continue to see progress move forward on as it relates to healthcare. And then whatever additional protections we'll need because of the Trump administration. Unfortunately, we have seen over a dozen executive orders that have targeted LGBTQ progress by the Trump administration. We've seen dozens of executive orders that impact other, diverse communities. And so I think it's really important for whoever's planning to, win the gubernatorial election in New Jersey is to remember that New Jersey is a diverse state. You know, you can't walk outside your home and not, meet people from different backgrounds, people who speak different languages, different religions, identify differently, love differently. And this came up in the Republican forum that NJ Globe hosted as well with Rider University. And that is, New Jersey's strength is its diversity. And we have to make sure that our diverse communities are protected under the law. And there are some candidates that have made it clear that certain, identified groups don't deserve the same rights and that progress should be rolled back. And there's other candidates that are going to, continue the progress that we've been making and continue to ensure those communities are protected. New Jersey will show us in this election how important that diversity piece is. But I think in the face of the type of hate that is coming out of this White House, and I know you've said you've had a few moments that you've really enjoyed since January 20th, and I believe that you have. But there has been some really awful moments. There have been some really nasty rhetoric. There has been some, hand gestures that I never thought that I would see coming from that world, coming from that orbit. The Oval Office, the White House, a presidential administration that is putting something into the world where it is not a time to retreat. It is a time to double down on what values are important to us. And then, as we were talking about a little bit earlier, something that affects us all, whether you're Black, white, gay, straight, trans, cisgender, affordability. We all buy eggs except you. because your cholesterol is too high. And we all
No, I
pay.
mean, in fairness, it's actually fine. It's just that I'm learning as in my 40s that there's just certain foods you just stay away from. I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, it's not for me personally, it's not complicated. But again, you're a young man, so I mean, again, you have the gift of youth, brother.
But
But
we have to talk about the issues that affect everyone as well. But diversity affects us all too, and kindness affects us all. The type of stuff that we put out into the world impacts everyone, whether it's the people that we are wanting to cause harm to, if we're not being kind, but that also sets a standard for young people. Young people are watching. And so as far as like calling other people names or, belittling other people because they don't share the same policies or, we don't share the same beliefs, that's got to stop. We really, even with a president like the one we've really got to show the next generation what kindness looks like. And that can start on programs like this where, we can come together and have a cordial conversation on varying topics that we have disagreements about. But it has to continue, especially in the world of X and social media. We have to just try to be more kind. I don't care for everybody that's in my world, right? I don't care for everybody that's in my orbit. I don't care for everyone that follows me on social media, but I don't call them names. I just try to stay positive. I try to stay focused. I think that's what everybody needs to do on social media. We have to end the name calling. We have to lift up diversity. We have to focus on kindness.
all right, fair enough. We'll leave it right there. Folks, again, check out GardenStateEquality.org for more information as it pertains to programs, trains, and services, any assistance that you're looking to obtain. You can do that by going to GardenStateEquality.org. Make sure you like them on Facebook. Follow them on Instagram and X. I'm not sure if they're on YouTube, but I'm sure they have some content up there, as well as on LinkedIn, maybe TikTok. I'm not sure. No TikTok. And again, folks, if you have any disposable income, I'm fair to everybody, regardless of the organization, left, right, nonpartisan, whatever. Click the donate button, folks. If you have any disposable income you're looking to donate during this tax season, click on that button, and your donation is safe, secure, and also tax deductible. Christian, any events coming up for Garden State Equality? I know that obviously celebrated 20 years recently, but any events coming up this spring that our audience should be made aware of?
We will be in Jersey City on Friday. So right next door at our Equality Soiree. Stop on by.
Is that the Ashford or is that the 626?
626 rooftop.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm Fred O'Connor. I'll listen. I got to come by, say hi to have a drink with you. And at some point we got to have dinner. Bring your husband. I'll bring the new girl or whatever girl around, and we can go out for dinner or something and shoot the shit, as they say. And we're boys. Just have a good conversation like we have here tonight. So, folks, again, check them out obviously on Facebook, also on Instagram and X. I believe it's at Fuscarino, right? I think all the handles are about the same.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, check him out. He is Christian Fuscarino, the executive director of Garden State Equality, the leading LGBTQ advocacy group here in New Jersey. My guest tonight here on Real Talk. Christian, I'm sure you caught some effing grief for coming on tonight, but I appreciate you're a gentleman. I think it was a great conversation, and we'll let the audience decide where they stand, and look forward to having you back on, brother.
All right. Have a great night. Thank you again.
Have a good night, brother, and thanks for hanging in there with me tonight here on Real Talk. Have a good night.
You too.
Folks, good stuff here on Real Talk. Again, it's 8:30 here on the East Coast. Folks, pretty good conversation, as they say here on the program, and certainly some good traffic here tonight. So if you haven't done so already, like, comment, and share tonight's episode of Real Talk here on Jersey First TV. Folks, you know what time it is. It's what you've been waiting for. It's time for final thoughts. And yes, folks, it's been a busy past week for New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist. Last Thursday, I went to downtown Jersey City. And of course, folks, one of the things that's always interesting about going to rallies like I went is it's a reminder about how evident Trump derangement syndrome is here in New Jersey, whether it's in media, higher education, activism, you name it, folks. There's no shortage of individuals that have very severe symptoms of Trump derangement syndrome. And of course, when I see their antics or their meltdowns on social media, I just have to laugh. Because you have to laugh at some of these people for some of the infantile behavior that they engage in. Folks, take your pick, okay? Whether it's Joe Amaditis over there at Woke State University in Montclair, right? Whether it's Alan Steinberg, who, let's be honest, folks, I mean, it's way past his bedtime, so he's not watching the show live, but trust me, he watches the replay. He can't help himself. Trust me, folks. I know this for a fact. All right? Or other, useless journalists like John Van Vliet from Insider NJ, or, other activists that love to virtue signal, right? Working government jobs like, Maria Rodriguez-Gregg or Laura Bustamante, or, useless journalists like Chucky, Charles Style with the Bergen Record, NorthJersey.com, or Uncle Dave with NJ Spotlight News, right? Or useless women in New Jersey media like Jay Lassiter, who, let's be honest, folks, if it wasn't for living off of his boyfriend's money and smoking weed all day, does this guy actually do any work, right? But this is who we're supposed to depend on for credible journalism? Yeah, I think not. Right? Or other insufferable activists, and again, all the usual social justice clowns and woke fools that, again, haven't learned their lesson since November and continue with their Trump derangement syndrome. But folks, when it comes to Trump derangement syndrome at a local level, folks, what comes to mind, and it really was evident last week on the steps of City Hall in downtown Jersey City, Grove Street, right, where state assembly candidates in the 32nd Legislative District, that's current Hoboken Mayor Ravi Bala and activist Katie Brennan. Now, I'm not going to show you the entire narrative of what they said at the rally, but folks, first of all, this wasn't even a rally. Okay, this was maybe a gathering of 25 people at best. And some of the signs out there, I'm not going to put them out there, they're not age appropriate. And I would argue that parental, strongly advised, as they say. All right. But what was interesting is seeing virtue signalers like Ravi Bala, who, again, didn't learn their lesson from November and seems to be peddling the same TDS talking points that, quite frankly, many people, not just on the right, but in the middle, have rejected. Let me just give you a little perspective of Ravi Bala's latest nonsense.
So who is here? Ravi Bala, Mayor of Hoboken.
Here we go.
Thank you so much to all the grassroots activists for being here. I'm reminded of a sign I just saw. It is, being a human is not an illegal thing. So just the terminology we're talking about is so offensive. But I want to just speak very briefly. First of
all, there's nothing brief about Ravi Bala. You think I'm long-winded? This mother effer beats me, and that's saying something.
The very first act that I did when I got elected 8 years ago, literally after being sworn in, was go to City Hall, sign an executive order declaring Hoboken a sanctuary city. That was the very first thing we did. It was during Trump's first term, and that...
Yes, folks, because in a city with high property taxes, overdevelopment, pricing out lifelong Hoboken residents, yes, this is what Ravi Bala prioritized in 2018. And since then, again, this is what Ravi Bala gets erect over, right? Pronouns over property taxes, right? Coddling woke nonsense over public safety, over making sure that, you know what, when you're spending taxpayer dollars repainting the crosswalks in Hoboken during Pride Month, you should be using that money to hire more police officers so people aren't assaulted in broad daylight in Hoboken when they're walking through public parks, Ravi. But again, Ravi Bala would rather virtue signal than actually come up with real solutions. And the latest rant by him, obviously, is that, well, I want to do everything in my power to protect illegals in Hoboken. Yeah, how's that turned out for you, Ravi? How's that turned out for New Jersey and the country with a wide open border the last 4 years and not enforcing federal immigration law? Now, I get it. You're an attorney. I don't have a law degree. But I remember taking constitutional law in grad school, right? Where at Rutgers, they shared a program with Rutgers Law. And I remember taking constitutional law. By the way, I got an A in it. You shouldn't be surprised. But I remember somewhere in the Constitution, it talks about the legislative branch's responsibility to ensure that immigration law is being followed, the preservation of our borders and enforcing federal immigration law. Folks, that's been in there. That's been decided by precedent. But you would think Ravi Bala, the superstar lawyer, would have remembered that from law school, but apparently not. Let's continue.
Means that nobody in the Hoboken Police Department can cooperate with federal authorities, including ICE, in any way, shape, or form. If you're detained, if you're arrested, you cannot ask for your immigration status. None of that is permitted. It's a very specific directive. If that is not here in Jersey City, I don't know. It should be. So I want to talk about actionable items. That's something that we can do here at the local level of Jersey City to protect our immigrant and undocumented communities, to make sure that you know that in this land that sits at the doorstep of the Statue of Liberty, every human being in America has equal rights under the law. It doesn't matter if you're documented, undocumented, what race, nationality, gender, national origin, ethnic background.
Look at this, like 25 people at best. That's not a rally, folks. Okay.
We in America are equal human beings, full stop, period. And then lastly, what Katie Brennan said is so important. There is a legislation pending in Trenton called the Immigrant Trust Act. That simply codifies the Immigrant Trust Directive that was a directive from the Attorney General in 2018 that simply said that you cannot weaponize civil authorities to enforce federal immigration laws. The reason why it needs to be passed by the legislature is because we don't know who the next governor is going to be. And if the next governor is not friendly towards immigrant communities, she or he can simply repeal that directive, or the next attorney general.
Well, folks, let's be very clear. The reason it won't get passed, okay, by this legislature is because it's a taboo topic. What did we learn from November the 5th? Americans were tired of a wide open border and illegals coming into our communities, in many instances, having kids here, okay, which subsequently uses up our social services, which subsequently overcrowds our schools, which subsequently destroys the quality of life in our communities and real estate when we're overcrowding illegals into apartments and homes. But Robbie Ball doesn't want to talk about that. Robbie Ball would rather virtue signal and demonize the federal government for finally doing its job for the first time in 4 years, because under the Biden administration, and yes, I get it that Joe Biden deported more people in the last 2 years than President Trump did in his first term. But regardless of that, we were still seeing wide open borders. We were seeing taxpayer dollars being utilized to pay for hotels to house these illegals. See, Robbie Ball doesn't want to talk about that. Robbie Ball would rather tell you, hey, the federal government's evil for enforcing immigration law. All right? This is the type of virtue signaling. And folks, again, this is what Democrats lost big on in November. And the reason the Immigrant Trust Act won't get passed this year is what legislator wants to go on record in a time when we are seeing that these ICE raids are working, that they're making our communities safer, that they're eliminating criminal illegals, in many instances, dangerous illegals off the streets, right? You would think that that matters. You would think that that's why New Jerseyans were sick and tired of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, which is why New Jersey came within 5 percentage points of going red for the first time since 1988. But it seems like people like Katie Brennan and Ravi Bala missed the memo. Or maybe they slept through November the 5th. Maybe they just got wasted and were pissed drunk out of their minds and didn't realize what the pulse was. Clearly, both of them continue to fail to read the room. Speaking about failing to read the room, let's go to Katie Brennan.
So here's what you all deserve to hear. You're right, it is a crisis, and we need to start to acting like it. No more asking the grassroots activists who all of the headquarters are elected officials to do the same outdated We need to
Yay, all 9 people cheering. Yay.
fight to protect New Jersey and to make our state a firewall against federal overreach and attacks on our communities. Here's some of the things.
Katie, what's the overreach? The federal government is enforcing federal immigration law. How is that an overreach? Again, this is what bothers me about Katie Brennan and Ravi Bala. They're trying to sucker you into believing that the federal government's responsibility to enforce federal immigration law is somehow an overreach. Sweetie, it's not. It just isn't. And the problem is that people like Ravi Bala and Katie Brennan don't want to get challenged on these assertions. They want to go and run their mouth with a megaphone in front of 25 people at a rally that no one gives a shit about. Okay? I went to cover because I knew I was going to get footage that would just make me so happy to publish, because it was going to expose how ridiculous these causes are and a lot of the activists that are there. Let's continue.
That New Jersey could do literally tomorrow. Literally tomorrow they could do. Creating a dedicated New Jersey Defense Fund to maintain critical services and programs when federal funding is arbitrarily frozen or cut. Number two, yes. Right on. It's already happening. Let's not act like we don't have tools. Number two, immediately passing the Immigrant Trust Act. Yes! This is already introduced. Why is it not moving? Why?
I'll tell you why it's not moving. Because in a time that New Jerseyans are fed up with illegals destroying our communities, Katie, they don't want to vote for it. They don't want to go on record, like other Democrats have, in basically coddling illegals. That's the message there. Look how well it worked out for Democrats this past election cycle. They couldn't regain the House. They lost the Senate. They lost the presidency. And multiple counties went red. New Jersey came within 5 points. New York was within single digits. California was only in the 10th percentile. Folks, regular, everyday people are tired of illegals running around our communities, destroying them, especially the dangerous criminal illegals. Those are the ones we're concerned about. And that's not me being a xenophobe. That's not me, being a bigot. That's having eyes, working eyes, which is more than I can say for Katie Brennan and Ravi Bala.
Why is it not voted on? All of your state legislative reps today. Passing that act would mean that local law enforcement cannot participate in the warrantless raids and ensure that our state and local resources are.
How is it warrantless? If ICE has a warrant to detain you, either you're here illegally or you already have outstanding charges, how is it warrantless? Folks, again, watch ICE raids. They're not just banging down doors and knocking in and suspending habeas corpus. Folks, there's a process to this. They're going in with warrants to tell you what they're looking for. Stop the bullshit, Katie. Stop the bullshit, Ravi. No one's buying it. Anybody who at least understands the issue, like myself, knows you're bullshitting us. No one's falling for it.
Not weaponized for federal immigration enforcement. It is critical legislation to safeguard the rights and privacy of everyone who lives here. And so what are you waiting for, friend? How many more raids? How many more raids have to happen until you pass this law?
How many more raids? As many as it takes, sweetie, to make sure that we're getting rid of dangerous illegals here in New Jersey and across these United States. But I would think that Katie Brennan, again, an activist, just like Ravi Bala, another activist, well, wannabe activist, would know these things. Okay? But let me not continue with this. I mean, you can just see, in general, some of the lunacy that goes on in these gatherings and even rallies. But let me give you a little bit of a take.
Member and organizer with DSA. DSA in the house? Woo! Yeah. Come on, a little louder. DSA in the house? Woo!
Yes, we're cheering for Democratic Socialists of America. How much of an asshole do you have to be to glorify a garbage organization like the Democrat Socialists of America? Those that don't believe in the nuclear family. Those that believe basically in socialism. These are the idiots, folks, that these organizations cheer for and glorify to speak at these gatherings of 20 people.
I just want to make 3 quick points. So one is, I'm old enough to, and I'm sure many other folks here are as well, to remember September 11th. ICE and DHS didn't exist before 9/11, okay? So when we say abolish ICE, we mean it, right? This is not, something that has been part of our government for years and years and years. And it is an agency that was supposed to fight terrorism, but it's causing terror in our communities.
It has fought terrorism. It's gotten a lot of illegals and criminals off the streets, bro. But again, you'd rather virtue signal and get the applause of like 9 people to get your, to get you all erect when we all know you're full of shit.
So I wanted a little history there. Second thing I want to say is voting is important. And the people that we vote for to hold them accountable is important.
Yeah, voting is important. The American people spoke last November. They're tired of wide open borders. They're tired of criminal illegals destroying our communities. I just listed all the reasons. But again, these are the people you can't reason with. You just can't.
We just elected Senator Andy Kim. He helped, smash the line, and that's really important for democracy in the state. But he voted to confirm the head of the DHS from the Trump administration, Fuscarino.
By the way, a governor during COVID that actually got it right when it came to the pandemic. Unlike Governor Murphy, at the time Governor Cuomo, Governor Newsom in California, Ned Lamont in Connecticut. But meanwhile, Republican governors like Kristi Noem, Ron DeSantis, and Greg Abbott got it right. They didn't keep their states shut down longer than they had to. Okay? They didn't have draconian mask and vaccine mandates. Yeah, they got it right. So what exactly are you objecting to when it comes to Kristi Noem? That she's a good governor? That she understands policy? What exactly are you bitching about?
So we have to keep an eye out. We have to hold our elected officials accountable, and no one gets a pass, right? Right. Okay. Last thing is I'm proud to raise our family in this city, flying the flag of Esme's mom today. And you can count on me in this city when immigrants are under attack. And I hope that we can count on all of you. So that's all I got. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank God that's all you got. Jesus. Here's another collection of idiocy, folks, at this point.
Ho, ho, hey, hey! Ho, ho, hey, hey! El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido.
Now they're like a bunch of woke white people practicing their Spanish when they're not going to, I don't know, Charritos or somewhere else, Gotta love it. Gotta love the white woke activists there, make sure their Spanish isn't, all in line. Oh, Jesus, enough. Like my ears, it's like they sound like mothers of my ex-girlfriends over the years. God, like just please. Of course I went to drink after this. Are you kidding me? You think I didn't need an alcoholic beverage after listening to this? Esta basura? Folks, this is the amount of virtue signaling. This is the amount of Trump derangement syndrome that is permeating right now in our political culture. Now, you can take it seriously if you want. I don't. And guess what? The election results last November told us so. And if they want to continue upon this path, that's cool. You can do that. You might take another L here in New Jersey for the foreseeable future. Speaking of Trump derangement syndrome, folks, of course, when we think about it in New Jersey media specifically, we think about Maxi Pizarro. Yes, we think about Max Pizarro, probably the least masculine cowboy that I know of in New Jersey media. But his latest column, folks, again, reminds us about, Max Pizarro has become, I would argue, very much like Kamala Harris is the queen of word salads. Maxi has become the king of word salads. He would rather read you this long, drawn-out word salad of a column, how hard he gets in his pants about President Zelensky out of Ukraine and the horrible job that President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance enacted last week. Folks, this is what happened Let me give you a very brief overview of what happened in the Oval Office. President Zelensky, for 4 years, like a lot of children, are used to having their hand out. And when they have their hand out, they get whatever they want. That's what happened in the last administration, where we gave over $175 billion to the country of Ukraine as they're trying to ward off the threat of communist Russia. Folks, here's the truth. Back during the Bush era, Vladimir Putin took over Crimea. Georgia. Okay? During the Obama administration, Vladimir Putin took over Crimea and started planting the seeds about Ukraine. And during the Biden administration, Vladimir Putin decided to invade Ukraine. Do you know when Vladimir Putin didn't do anything? Yes, it's not because Donald Trump's a Russian asset. No, he's not. It's because you know when someone has a spine and when someone doesn't. Now, is Vladimir Putin going to invade another part of Europe? That's not going to happen on this watch. And the reason it's not going to happen is because we're showing the world that you don't cave to someone like Putin. But what you also shouldn't do is cave to someone like Zelensky, who has been taking taxpayer dollars for years. Did you ever notice the Vogue cover with his wife? How does a country at war and a president at war find the time to make sure his wife can go pose for Vogue? How does that happen? How does it happen that Vladimir Zelensky owns multiple homes used with taxpayer dollars? And all Donald Trump and J.D. Vance want is accountability. What's going on here? So, cool. Call them out on the bullshit. But you know who doesn't call out anybody on their bullshit? Max Pizarro. Because Max Pizarro would rather virtue signal and remind you that he's another TDS sycophant like everybody else at Insider NJ, except Fred Snowflake. Fred Snowflake's pretty cool. But the other waste of life, basically the waste of organs at that news site, if you even call it that. Jay Lasser, Bob Hennelly, Alan Steinberg, John Van Vliet, Alan Levin, take your pick. But one part of the column that really, really stood out for me, when it comes to Maxi, all right, here we go. Whatever happens tomorrow, leaders showed up today at the White House. Battle tested. What battle tested? Zelensky's flying around to the White House. He's flying to Pennsylvania to go campaign for Kamala Harris. How's that battle tested, Max? Again, it's the usual bullshit for Max Pizarro. His name is Zelensky. Maybe others can learn from such a show of strength and toughness and justice. Hard won. Hopefully by close proximity. At this point, one can only pray. Thank you, Mr. President of Ukraine, from an American. Folks, here's the reality here. The only one that showed strength last week in the Oval Office was President Trump and J.D. Vance, because they held them accountable. Because that's what we need to do to Ukraine, is hold them accountable. The idea of, listen, for everyone with a I stand with Ukraine flag and oh my God, and they changed their profile picture to blue and yellow. Cool. You're all about it. Donate money. Take your ass over there. Since the Ukrainian army is welcoming foreigners to enlist in the Ukrainian army, take your asses over there and go defend Ukraine. Because somehow defending the borders of Ukraine is paramount, Max. But when it comes to protecting the borders of this country, you couldn't give a shit. And that's why I can't take Max Pizarro seriously when it comes to this, which is why no one takes Insider NJ seriously, which is why consistently the New Jersey Globe continues to outclass, outmaneuver, and outpublish garbage news sites like Insider NJ. Okay? Folks, we should know better. That's Max Pizarro. And unfortunately, when you look at him looking like this, it's hard to take it seriously. But then again, when does anyone ever take Max Pizarro seriously? And those are my final thoughts. Folks, we're just about to wrap up here. A pretty long show, but again, I want to thank everyone for tuning in here tonight. Special thank you to RWJ Barnabas and the Jersey Medical Center today for their invitation once again for the second consecutive year to New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist to be a judge in this year's Hudson County STEM Showcase with over 500 very talented students in attendance tonight, okay, at the Liberty Science Center. Folks, I got quite the education today in the outstanding fields of STEM. And folks, we're in good hands here with over 500 talented and gifted students in Hudson County at various local schools. I got to tell you, these are brilliant minds doing brilliant things. It was a privilege to be around them. It was a privilege just to learn just a little bit more today in the very diverse field of course, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Once again, special thank you to the Jersey City Medical Center and RWJ Barnabas for their invitation this year, for the hospitality, and quite frankly, for the privilege of being around so many gifted students and their gifted teachers. Folks, before we call it a week here, once again, to no one's surprise, I want to thank you all for, once again, supporting Real Talk with Fernando Uribe for the month of February. Folks, it's going on 2 years now. Outstanding traffic here on this program. Unlike all the Mickey Mouse journalists with the little Mickey Mouse shows, the little Mickey Mouse news sites and Mickey Mouse columns, folks, the only traffic they know is on Route 3, Route 202, Route 78, Route 1, the Turnpike Parkway. That's the only traffic they know. But here on this show, it's real traffic because it's Real Talk.
All I do is win, 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 no matter what. Got money on my mind, I can never get enough. And every time I step up in the building, everybody hands go up. And they stay there, and they
Let's listen to that again.
all I do is win, 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 no matter what. Got money on my mind, I can never get enough. And every time I step up in the building, everybody hands go up. And they stay there.
All right, folks, once again, to everyone that makes this number possible. And again, I'm deeply humbled. And I'm not the most humble guy around, but I'm humbled by your support, by tuning in live every Monday night, and of course, sharing the episodes on all of your social media platforms. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. But then again, folks, it's hard to be humble when you're this great. And Real Talk continues to be great. And that's our show for this week. Once again, I want to thank Christian Fuscarino, the Executive Director of Garden State Equality, for a wonderful program, wonderful conversation, very informative. You can certainly hope you share the episode whenever you can later on tonight and throughout this week. Once again, folks, make sure you like Real Talk with Fernando Uribe on Facebook. Of course, follow us on Instagram and X. Whether you do it already, make sure you subscribe to Jersey First on YouTube. Like, comment, and share. You'll be automatically notified of all the great content we bring you every single week here on Jersey First TV. And of course, when you get your podcast on Spotify or SoundCloud, download Jersey First and take it with you anywhere at any time, specifically this weekend when daylight savings times returns. And of course, we set the clocks forward. You know what? We'll see a sunset a little bit later moving forward after this weekend. So hopefully we can see some warm weather. Baseball's coming back. My Lakers are doing well. The Devils are doing well. Folks, it's springtime. Make sure you set your clocks forward this weekend. Of course, as you're doing that, and you're doing that on your smartphone, make sure you check out Jersey First TV. Can't say enough what a privilege it is to be a part of the dream team of Garden State Media, folks. That's right. It is Jersey First TV. Of course, brand new episodes of the Nader Narrative premiere every Thursday. Check out the listings, of course, hosted by the amazing Elizabeth Nader. And brand new episodes of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe premiere every Monday night. Of course, check your local listings once again for start times. And folks, I can't say it enough. If it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's Real Talk right here on the Jersey First Television Network. I am the generational talent in Garden State Media. And folks, my level of honesty, now more than ever, is truly necessary in this era of journalistic deception. That's right, folks. It's me, Fernando Uribe. Happy March. Enjoy the rest of your week, folks. Please party responsibly at all the upcoming St. Paddy's Day festivals coming up. Again, don't drink and drive. Plenty of ride-sharing apps available for you. Again, make sure you party responsibly. We appreciate you tuning in here. Thanks for stopping by. And folks, don't forget to set your clocks back. I'll see you next Monday night here on Real Talk, folks, on the Jersey First Television Network. And always remember, stay classy, everyone.